It is an extraordinary day to just show up. Hi, everyone. Yvonne Heath here, nurse turned author, speaker, and changemaker, and your host. Welcome to Navigating Grief with Heart and Humor, where we talk about, plan, and prepare for grief, transitions, end of life, and all topics that sometimes make our heart ache, all the messiness that life brings us, so that we can live fully now. We want to be proactive instead of reactive. Much of the time in our lives, as we've normalized in our society, we wait until we are in crisis, in the deep trenches of grief, and then we wonder why we are suffering excessively and we don't know how to navigate what life has thrown at us. This isn't about avoiding grief. This isn't about making the journey easy. It's never easy to face a death of a loved one, to face something challenging, to face heartache. And yet, when we have conversations, we have a solid foundation of coping skills, strategies, support systems, and we do everything we can to ease the journey. I promise you, it makes all of the difference. How do I know? Because I've done it in my life. I have suffered excessively in 27 years of nursing, as a parent, as a human being. And now, when grief arrives in my life, I navigate it in a very, very different way. And so that is what I aspire to help you discover. And of course, I am continuously learning as we support one another and just sit at the table with new ideas and new experiences, share our stories as we heal and move forward. So, as always, I want to begin with a little fun fact, and then I will settle in. And when I was thinking of today's topic, I thought of a story that happened in very early in my nursing career in Toronto, Ontario. And we had ward rooms where there were 8 patients. And often they all spoke different languages. We didn't know what anyone was saying. It was a little chaotic, to say the least. But we loved on everyone, and we did the very best we could, and we had an amazing team. And every now and again, we would have a new intern working with a doctor who might be a little, let's say, arrogant and maybe thought he knew more than we did, even though he was just starting and we were nurses that were there all day, every day. Let's think about that. Anyways, in this ward room one night at 2 a.m, one of our lovely patients died, and we had all of the curtains pulled for everyone else, and well, all of them. And we let this very arrogant, who didn't want to hear anything we had to say, let him know which curtain the deceased patient was behind. Well, karma played a little hand, and he pulled back the wrong curtain. And I remember our little Marjorie, who was just, she was very pale and very, very thin, and she was lying there like this. And he went to pronounce her, thinking she was the one who had died. And she sat right up in the bed and said, "Can I help you, Sonny?" Oh, you should have seen his face. He just jumped a foot in the air and was just so red and then pale when shaken, and he just walked away. And all of us very supportive nurses were on our knees, laughing so hard with tears coming out of our eyes. We couldn't even help him. And he just walked away in a huff. I love that story. What a fun fact. Okay, so let's get serious. Let's begin with our topic today. And as always, I know everyone has many other things they could be doing, so I honor you for taking this time to be here, be present, share, and learn as we all do. So I want to forget about all the noise on the other side of that door. My head always spinning, spinning with different things. And I just want to land here and be fully present and set an intention. And this is part of my ritual, and rituals are something we need to create more and more, practices, whatever you want to call it. So for me, when I want to be very present and sort of tap into my own intuition, I just sit plant both feet on the floor, and I take 2 slow, deep breaths, inhaling through my nose and just setting my intention, and exhaling, just grounding myself and being very intentional. So I also close my eyes. I invite you to join me, or whatever ritual will help you to arrive here and be fully present for our time together. So I'm just going to begin. Inhaling slowly and deeply, setting my intention for our time together. I always encourage anyone to do that several times a day when we feel frazzled or there's too much noise externally or internally. We undervalue how important that slow, deep breath can be and how it can calm the nervous system. All right, so let's get started. And as always, I go with my experience, my lived experience, and there's been a lot of grieving people and dying people in death, all surrounding us. And when I talk about, I'm very passionate about my 7 takeaways that I believe with all my heart and soul are essential principles to live life to the fullest, learn to grieve and support one another, and to have the talk about end of life long before it arrives and diffuse the fear so we can live fully now. And the best time to have that talk is when we are young and healthy, and the next best time is now. And as I talk about being proactive and creating that solid foundation before grief arrives, before something happens in your life that is unpredictable and unwelcome change happens, as a part of that foundation, I always want to start with addressing the hardest stuff. And for most of us, that is the death of a loved one or someone we care about, or helping to support someone we love so much who is facing the death of a loved one. And so, as always, I say the first thing we need to do for ourselves so that we can just show up for ourselves and others is discover our belief about life and death. Choose to believe something that will bring us comfort in life, in death. And do we believe in afterlife, after death? What happens? And I choose to believe something that brings me comfort. And if we have been raised with certain beliefs that cause fear, I invite you to dig in and really do what you can to diffuse that fear, because that just robs our life of joy. And in that, once we have that, and the other thing is, we as a society, Western culture, do not know what to expect in the dying process. And so of course it's already, we have grief and then we have fear. And so wouldn't it be wonderful if we could say, okay, I know this will be challenging. When we know what to expect, and it's not an exact science, but if we have an idea and we know what to expect, then perhaps we can just show up and take those slow, deep breaths and say, ooh, this is frightening. Oh, yes, this is a part of the dying process. Isn't that something that we should teach everyone and we should learn for ourselves? Absolutely. It is the only way I have been able to be at the bedside of more dying people than I can count. Knowing that is an honor and a privilege, knowing that I'm not there to fix it, but I can love and support them along the way. And as I walk away and know that I did the best I could, even if it wasn't perfect, there are no perfect words. I just try to love people along the way and not panic when the signs of impending death arrive, because I know that that is a part of the natural dying process. And so I know this is a very challenging topic for many of us. And so I may do this over a couple of episodes. We'll see how things are going. But I want to start with the hardest signs. And also I will share some beautiful resources. Many of them are on our Love Your Life to Death website in our resource section. But there are just so many wonderful, beautiful humans sharing their knowledge so that we can, I mean, it's at the tip, you just Google and there it is, these beautiful resources. And I want to share some that I really feel are so very helpful. So one of the most challenging things I would say, I'll share three. Number one is, as someone is entering or close to the dying process, as they navigate that journey, and it is a process, right? We want it to be quicker. It is a process. And as beautiful Barbara Carnes says, a beautiful resource, by the way, she says, as long as somebody is living, someone is learning something. As long as someone is living, someone is learning something. And so as much as we think, oh, I don't want them to suffer anymore, well, oftentimes the dying person is sleeping most of the time. And if they are in pain, we have medication, and we'll talk about breathing. So much of that suffering is our own. So in that, there is so much to learn, isn't there? To learn compassion and patience and allowing the process and being present even when it is not comfortable. Don't wait for it to be comfortable. And in that time, the greatest thing we can do is think, what would they like? Will I share their music? Can I bring their pets? Can I tell them stories, how much I love them and I will miss them, and do whatever we can. So that is our journey. Because as people approach active dying, which is at the sort of last phase close to death, they will most of the time be sleeping or almost in a comatose state. 24 hours a day, they are sleeping. They are not alert. They are in that their body is just shutting down. And that is challenging for us, isn't it? We want to have those great conversations like in the movies, right to the end of the day, of their last breath. I love you too. And then they just die. Well, that's not really how it goes for the most part. People have a process and they're sleeping most of the time, and it could be days and days and days. Well, few days, whatever it may be. So if we can anticipate that and know that we don't get to decide how long it takes. It takes as long as it takes. It is a process. And what can we do in this to learn? What do we have to learn? And how much can we show how much we care? And the other thing that is very hard is, even as people are maybe not asleep, they often, their world sort of shrinks and they're less and less interested in maybe socializing. And maybe it's because they don't have the energy. Maybe it's because it's too hard for them to have all of that hubbub around, and some people would like it, but it is their journey, right? It's not about us. And I just did a presentation. I had someone say, well, I want to just show up for this person in hospice, but she doesn't want me there. And she felt so hurt. And I explained, as people are saying goodbye, they may need to do it alone. They may need to, they take, we all die alone. I mean, we can say, well, people from the other side are coming to get us, are coming to accompany us, how wonderful. But I mean, we're not going with them. We can love them in their life, love them in the dying process, and that final step they take. And they may just need to walk that final last bit on their own. It is not personal. So I always say to people, if you're not able to spend time with that person who is dying that you care about, support the supporters, support the people around them, support your other grieving family, friends, whoever, support one another, hug, cry, do whatever, share stories. In the dying process, you don't have to wait for a funeral or celebration of life. But all those people that may be there supporting them, they could absolutely use your support. Right? So there will be a natural evolution of shutting down and sleeping most of the time. The other thing that is very challenging for people is, as people are in the last maybe few months, weeks, days of life, they will take in less food. They will take in less fluids. And we, again, as a society, are desperate for people to continue to eat and continue to drink because we care. And that's our way of caring. And here's the thing, the elephant in the room, the hard truth. Their body no longer needs the food and the fluids. Their body cannot process that food and fluids and use it. And so what happens is digestive issues. What happens is if we give IV fluids, intravenous fluids, or push fluids, it causes swelling. People do not die because they stop eating and drinking. They stop eating and drinking because they are dying. That is part of a wonderful quote. I am a facilitator for a program called Last Aid, which is another great resource. That is an international organization that teaches about what to expect at the end of life. And so to educate ourselves and understand, and I will tell you right now, when you look back, and in my book, beautiful people share stories of how they wish they had done things differently. They were trying to force their loved one to eat. Come on, you have to eat, you have to drink. And there were arguments, and they just wasted that precious time. They wasted that precious time trying to force them to eat. And honestly, as healthcare professionals, we felt like we were, oh, come on, just one more bite, Joe, just take it, take it. And Joe didn't want it. So as hospice nurse Julie, who is an extraordinary person teaching us about end of life and what to expect, and you can find her on Instagram and just learn all of this in little clips. She says, let the patient be your guide. Let the person be your guide. And 3 things. Are they comfortable? Are they safe? Comfortable, safe, and there's one more. Forget what the third one is. Yes, but we want to fix it. We want to fix it, right? And so let's learn about why it is important. Julie says the drier someone is without the fluids, the more peaceful they will die. So think about that, right? We want them to be, clean, there it is, comfortable, clean, and safe. That is the best we can do, and love them through the process. So as their bodies are naturally shutting down, we are biologically built to live and biologically built to die. Our bodies know. Let the person be your guide. They will be sleeping more and more and more and in a almost comatose state. And that is in the actively dying phase, and they will be taking in less and less fluid and food. And just allow that. Allow that. And the third thing that I feel is one of the most challenging is the breathing changes, right? People panic because their breathing is changing, and it may sound scary. They may have apnea, which is periods of not breathing at all. And then they take a breath. They're like, oh my gosh, this is it. And then they take a breath. Or chain stoking. It could be fast and then slow and then fast and then slow. And the most challenging is what they call the death rattle or gurgling. At the back of their throat, saliva collects because they don't have the capacity to swallow or clear their throat. So as they're breathing, it just sounds very gurgly and rattly. And here's the thing again. It will not cause distress for the person who is dying. I mean, you can tell if someone is in distress, even if they can't tell you, they're very agitated. And of course, there's medication for that. And there are some things we could do to help with the rattling. However, most of the time is much harder for us than it is for the person. So I would say those are the 3 most challenging to witness, most challenging to allow. And if we can educate ourselves, if we can understand that these signs and symptoms they are part of the dying process, and this is their journey. We are there to accompany them This is our time. It can be precious time. They can have moments of alertness. If we can just allow the process. And on the waiting room revolution, here's another great resource. It's a wonderful podcast with Dr. Sammy Winemaker and Dr. Xian Xiao. Oh my gosh, they're so wonderful. I just happened to be a guest the other day. Sammy was the first I heard this, because again, I'm always educating myself. So with certain diseases and illnesses, there is a sort of trajectory that we can predict the outcome. So ask your doctor about it. Ask questions. You have every right to ask questions. And when people say, well, how long is, when are they going to die? And of course, we never know exactly when someone is going to die. But here's the thing that Sammy said, and I was so grateful. She said, when someone's changes and like their declining is every month, they probably have months to live. If there's changes and decline every week, perhaps weeks to live. Every day, days to live. Every hour, hours to live. So if you have that sort of in your mind, then you can step back and say, okay. And remembering, none of us want our loved ones to suffer. And we suffer when we want things to be different. Dying is a process. How long it will be is their journey. Our job is to love and support them along the way, learn what we can learn in the process, and just do the very best we can. Last tidbit I must share, because I have seen so many people suffer because of this. When someone is taking their last breath, you can ask anyone, any healthcare professional, and they will agree. I believe that people choose whether you are in the room or not, either because it is too hard for them if you are there, or they feel it will be too hard for you to be there, or you are present for that last breath. They decide, I promise you, some way, somehow, that is what they needed to do. Hold on to that, because I've had so many people absolutely devastated. They've been with someone in the dying process for months and months and months. And then they finally go have a shower because they haven't had one in a really long time, or they go to the bathroom, and that is when the person takes their last breath. If you can have that conversation before, and if you could just say, yes, that's what they needed to do, you will not create your own excessive suffering. Whew, I think that's enough for now, don't you? I know this is very challenging, and yet what makes it more challenging is not being aware of this. So I mentioned a few resources, and there are beautiful resources that you can learn from before the dying process, before our loved one dies, or if this has happened and you were ill prepared, it's never too late to learn. You can find Catherine Mannix and her beautiful TEDx talk and her resources. Dr. Barbara Carnes is amazing. Hospice nurse Julie, and Sammy and Xian Xiao in the Waiting Room Revolution, and virtualhospice.ca. No matter where you live, there's beautiful resources there. And of course, loveyourlifetodeath.com. I have many resources, and I feel like when people read my book and they have my program, Get Ready for Grief, it helps them to navigate through and have lifetime resources so we can do this differently. So give yourself a big hug for just showing up today. You're having a tear, a cry, that's okay too. Let those tears flow, because I know this is challenging, and I love, love, love you. I'm sending you so much love right now. You know that you can reach out anytime, and let's continue to have these conversations so we can be more empowered and resilient when grief and death arrive. And how we can just show up for ourselves and each other. Start with our own life. Start with our own coping skills and strategies. How? Plan your life, plan your death, and then just love your life to death. And always bring your own tambourine to the party. Thank you so much. I love you with all my heart. We'll see you in the next episode and we'll continue this conversation. Bye for now.